Hello and welcome to a lesson on methods, also known in other computer programming language as functions, but in Java they're called methods. Methods are the next step up from branches of code. And so we're just working our way through basic programming right now. If you remember, the basic building block of computer programming is variables. And variables is basically when you're assigning a piece of data to a name. And so you're assigning something to a name by which it can be called, a name by which it can be manipulated. You can do math with variables, all of that. And if you remember, you use variables to build branches of code, which are you have two types of branches. You have conditional branches and you have loops. Both of those are different types of branches that run based off of what's true in the variables. And so a conditional runs if something is true of a variable. A loop will keep running until a variable is no longer true. We're going to do some more with loops later on in this assignment. Then you use branches to build methods, also known as functions. And so that's what we're talking about now, is we're taking another step up. So variables make branches, which make method functions, which make classes and objects, which is what we're going to talk about next time. So there's a little bit of commercial. Next time is variables make branches, which make methods, which make classes and objects. So with that said, let's talk about methods. Methods are a very simple, easy thing to understand. Methods are, you're basically assigning a name to an entire block of code so that whenever you want the computer to run that block of code, you don't have to retype it or copy and paste it or redo it. You could just run it over and over and over and over again. So with that said, methods have three parts. There's three parts to a method. If you're in one of my classes, this will almost certainly be on the quiz or test or a worksheet or something. So there's three parts to method. First, a method has to have a name. It has to have a name by which it can be called. And so just like a variable, it needs a name. The second thing it needs is parameters. It needs defined variables, or variables whose definition, which are being defined or set from somewhere outside the parameter. We'll get into those. I'll give you some examples. Then the last thing it needs is commands. You need to give it commands. So you have a name, you have parameters, and then you have the actual commands or the code that actually makes up the method. And so those are the three parts that you need for a method or a function. You need name, you need parameters, and you need commands. So in Java, here's what it looks like. I'll give you some examples and then we'll go back and go over that again. And so in Java, first of all, you define your methods between the class and the arguments. So whatever is below the public static void main string args is actually what the computer is going to run. Whatever is above it is what's defined, and so what's just sort of saved to the computer's memory, but it's not necessarily going to run it, which is what a method is. You're saving it, but you're not necessarily going to run it. So you need to make sure you're between the class and the arguments is what you need to make sure you're between. And then to define a method, it's actually pretty easy. You need to write static void because that's a type of method. So you need to say static void. Static just means it's going to stay the same. Void is just something you write. And then we're going to give a method a name, sum. And then parameters go in parentheses. So you want two parentheses. And then in between those two parentheses, you want your parameters. And the parameters are the variables which once again are going to be defined by somewhere outside of the method itself, which I'll show you kind of what that looks like later. And so because they're variables, we have to define them, which means they need a data type and then a name themselves. So we're going to do integer value 1 and integer value 2. Then we're going to open a new block of code using curly brackets. And in between the curly brackets are where your commands go. So up here, remember, methods have three parts. They have a name, they have commands, and they have parameters. Name, parameter, commands. And so right now the name is sum, the parameters are value 1 and value 2, and then in between these are going to be the commands. We're just going to do two commands. Command 1 is we're going to create a new variable called total, and it's going to equal value 1 plus value 2, semicolon. And then the second command is we're going to print it out. So pretty easy little method here. System.out.println, and then we're going to say total. So print out the total. So there we go. We have created a method. It's a static void method. The name is sum. The parameters are two values, value 1, value 2, both integers, and then the total, we're creating a variable inside the parameter called total, and then we're going to print out whatever the total is. Now watch what happens when I click run. Nothing happened. And the reason nothing happened is because we have defined the function or the method right here, but we have not yet run it. So in order to actually run it, we have to call it by name. It's also called calling a method or calling a function, meaning we have to call it by name. In the same way, if I'm calling you for dinner, I need to yell your name, right? Say, come to dinner. So we need to call it. So down here in our main arguments, which is this block of code right here, you see that right there. We are going to call the function, and and how to call the function is you say sum, and then you define the variables in parentheses. So we're going to do sum1, comma 2. Don't forget your semicolon. So what we have just said is we have said run these two commands using 1 as value 1 and 2 as value 2. And it should print out 3 if it decides it likes me. It's been kind of struggling today. If your struggles, always refresh the page, or always sometime clicking this X really helps in clearing your console down here. But there you go. It said 3. Now watch. Now I can run it again. And I can run it again using a 100 and 4,510. Don't forget your semicolon. And then it's going to add that. It's going to be 4610. Do you see that? Yep, see that? And then if you're following along at home, we can do it again with 5,000 and 5,000. So now that it's defined up here, all we need to do is give it a name and in parentheses define the parameters. So hopefully that's helping you understand what parameters do now. Is we in parentheses we say these are what should be saved to these variables, and these are what we need to run down here. Isn't that cool? Except it's once again being difficult, which is kind of a weird thing that it's doing that. But yours should, yeah, give you the numbers. So really cool. So up here, let me give you another example then. Remember to write clean code. Remember to kind of space things out and indent things so you can kind of tell what's going on. So we're going to create another static void. This one we'll name product, and I bet you never guessed where I'm going here. Int, we're going to do value 3 and int value 4 for this one, just to not screw things up with value 1, 2. And the same thing here, we're going to do total 1 equals value 3 times value 4. There we go. Don't forget your semicolon, and then of course we're going to print it out. Line total 1. There we go. So now we've defined another one. We have 2. We have value 1 and value 2. And then we have a product value. So down here we can say product, and we could do 5, 10. And it's going to print out. If it gets around to it, it'll say 50, except it didn't like something that I did. What didn't it like that I did? Oh, I left a semicolon off somewhere. Oh, I don't see it. Do you see it? Oh, I added a parenthesis I shouldn't have added. So that's debugging your code. I like making mistakes like this being recorded so you guys can see how I sort of debug and how I read those things. So there we go, 50. Now even up here we can throw product in between our sums, right? We could do 5, 5, and it will put 25 in our letters. So that's how methods work. It's pretty easy. You just have a name, you have parameters, and you have your commands, and then you call it with a name, and in parentheses you say use these as our parameters, and then it runs and it does it. So notice how many lines of code I've run. So right here I typed 5 lines of code, but it actually ran 10 lines of code. Now imagine big computer games which run over and over and over and over. They run so many methods all the time. You're saving yourselves a ton of space. It's just running the same thing over and over again. Really cool, right? So now let me give you kind of a big example, which will also help you do the assignment that's attached to this. We're going to do sort of the grading assignment I had you do last time if you're in one of my classes. We're going to recreate that program, but we're also going to create it as a loop. And this will help you do the assignment I'm having my classes do for this week. So once again, we're going to create another method. So we have sum and we have product. Notice here we're still above line 17. We're still above the arguments. You have to define your methods above your public static void main string args, right? And this one we're going to do the grades, right? And we're going to create a few parameters. So just follow along. The first is going to be a string, and that's going to be name. And the second is going to be I'm just trying to think of a simple one, so we're not here forever. It's going to be a double, and it's just going to be sort of a test grade, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do sort of a test grade, and we'll leave it there for now. We may come back and add another parameter. And then what we're going to do is our commands are going to be a system.out.println, and we're going to say hello, and then plus the name. So we're going to concatenate that together. Don't forget the semicolon. And then we are going to take test grade, and we're going to say the test grade is equal to 30% of the total grade. So we're going to say test grade equals tests times 0.3 for 30% of the grade. Up here, though, let's change this to tests. And then we're going to system.out.println. We're going to say your test percentage is, and then we're going to add test grade in there, concatenated in there. So that's the method. It's just 3 commands. Now, though, we have to figure out how are we going to get the name and their test grade in there. And so how we're going to do that is down here, now we're down below the public static void main string args, right? So you have to stay below that. We are going to ask, well, first of all, we need to set up some input. So you need to remember how to do that. One is we import the scanner up here. So import the scanner. Make sure you have that on line 1. Import java.util.scanner, right? And then down here, we're going to set up the object, which I have over here. Scanner object equals new scanner system.in. So you're going to want that. Set up a new object for the scanner, right? And then we're going to system.out.println, and we're going to say, what is your name, right? And then we can't use name because it's already used as a variable in our method up here. And so we can't use name. So instead we might have to put like input. We'll just say input equals next object.next, right? And that's all we have to do there. Yep, object.next right there. So we have their input, and then we're going to ask them, you're going to say, what grade did you get on your test? And then we're going to say grade, maybe. What did we name our method? Remember, you can't ever name anything the same thing twice, so you got to be very careful about that. So we have test grade, but we don't have grades, so that's good. We have grades, we have grade, and then grade equals object.next double semicolon, right? And now we're just going to call the function. We're just going to say run grades with input for name. And so input here is going to be the name here, and then grade is going to correspond to tests up here. Do you see that? So there's a name and tests, and we say for the name, whatever was saved as input, which was your name, and then grade is whatever they put for their grade. So grades, input, grade. Now let's run it and see if it's going to whine at me for doing errors. And it did, because I did not do semicolons after that. Easy mistake to make. So now let's see if it likes me. Nope, still very much does not like me. It says cannot find symbol. It's because I never defined it. That was really dumb. So here we need to put string input equals object.next, and then here we need to put double is grade. Double is, I'm pretty sure double is lowercase, so make sure int and double are lowercase here. If I would have done that there, it would have recognized it. So yeah, we want lowercase double. We want to make sure string is defined there. That's why it's whining at us, because we never defined them. And hey, that's starting to look pretty good. As I said, nope, it's not looking good. Oh, variable test grade, to location, error, cannot find symbol, is test grade. Thought. Oh, I never defined test grade up here. I'm making all the dumb mistakes. So this is a double, test grade equals. So I'm still making silly mistakes, but it's good for you to see me sort of debug my own programs. There we go. What is your name? Kevin. My name is Kevin. And let's test it with an easy number. And yep, so there we go. Hello, Kevin. Your test percentage is 27% of your final grade. Do you see how that worked? So I did get it to work. Now, because your assignment this week involves a loop, let's create a loop real quick. Let's turn this right all down here into a loop. So our loop's going to start where we ask, what is your name? But up here, we're going to define another variable, and we're just going to say integer loop equals 1. And then we're going to say while loop equals 1. And you need to put that in parentheses. And then remember, you open a new branch of code using the curly brackets. And then the branch is going to end all the way down here. But we're going to ask one more question at the bottom. So after we print out to them the input, after we run the method, the input and the grade, we're going to print out, do you want to continue? Press 1 to continue. And then we're going to say loop now equals, and we don't need a data type there because up here we already defined it, and then loop equals object.next int, like that. And so yeah, object.next int. I'm pretty sure int is capitalized. It's always nice to have this open, which, by the way, always have another code open that works so you can compare. That's always a great thing to do. And so, yep, next int capitalized. So we said loop equals object.nextInt. So if they press 1, it will continue. And if they didn't press 1, then it will be something else and it won't continue. And so that's how we create it sort of in a loop. That's kind of how you do a while loop, which helps you. And once again, I forgot a semicolon. So there we go. Don't forget your semicolons. So always the first thing you want to check. So what's my name? My name happens to still be Kevin. I still got a 90 on my test, and we're going to continue. What is your name? You can say Lisa. What grade did you get on test? 50. 15% of her grade. 1 to continue. My name is Timmy. Is it going? Timmy. And then Timmy got 50. And then we're going to press 3, and it's over. See how that works? So we created a while loop up here, and the method ran in the while loop, which is right here. There's the method and parameters, and it's just going to keep running over and over and over again. Isn't that cool? So that's how you do a while loop with sort of a method. That'll help you on your assignment this week. So yeah. So once again, methods have a name, parameters, and commands. Parameters go in parentheses like that. Make sure you remember your semicolons, but remember your data types, which is what I was struggling with earlier. Name is whatever's there. And then you call it by just writing the name, and in parentheses defining your parameters. Your parameters can be defined by numbers, names, letters, but they can also be defined by other variables, which is what we did here. We took 2 variables, input and grade, and ran them as the parameters in our method. And then we created a nice little loop. Remember your brackets too. If you open a branch, close a branch. And yeah, if you have any questions, ask me. Pretty fun stuff. If you ask me, I really like doing methods and teaching methods just because it's kind of fun, and it's one of the easier things about computer coding there is. So next week is classes and objects. That's where things get a lot more difficult. We'll see you next time.